and roll. Welcome you out to our trek today. It's going to be a good one. We've got a good crowd. That's great. I'm glad that you're all here. Let me just start by introducing Wayne Kendall Hinton, known only to me as Kendall. As we grew up, it was always Kendall. He moved away from Hurricane, and his name was Wayne, and so they started for, I can't remember what reasons, on documents.
I'm tired of fighting it if they want you to write your name, first name, last name.
Okay. Anyway, Kendall has been great to work with us on our treks, and he's done this one before, several years ago. I think it was 18 years ago we did this. So, anybody come on that trek 18 years ago? Okay, a couple of us. Anyway, Kendall has lived in Cedar for a long time. He taught there at SUU, and he was a professor there of history, and has written books and articles and so forth. He's been the national president of Sons of Utah Pioneers, 3 years ago? And 24 years ago. So anyway, we're glad that he was willing to sacrifice a outing or a luncheon with the Cedar chapter to come and do this for us today. So we're glad that he's here. And we'll turn the time over to him, and he can give us what he wants, and then we'll wander out through here some of the structures and the kilns and so forth. There are restrooms right here, and I think that's about all. Any questions before we get started?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What relation to Wayne, who taught at high school, are you?
He's my dad.
It's your dad.
I always thought you took his dad's good name.
Wayne Kendall. So, all right, we'll turn it over to Wayne Kendall.
Did you take a class from Wayne?
I didn't. He retired just a year or so before I was there.
All right. You did.
We took classes from
It was too tough.
Lynn, though.
I met a man one day in the foyer of the stake center when I was stake president, and he said that he was taking a math class from my dad, and he could never catch on. He couldn't pass the exams and so forth. And my dad tutored him and so forth, and finally, at the end of the year, Dad said, "Well, I'm going to pass you if you'll promise never to take another class from me." This community that existed here from 1868 to 1890 was first known as Iron City. That was kind of ambitious because it never really became a city. It's known locally as Irontown. The first fence that was put up here, the first attempt to preserve this, was by the Cedar City chapter of SUP. In 1948, they put the first fence up around what remains of the ironworks. When the Saints arrived in Utah, it was imperative that they get basic industrial materials such as iron. Brigham Young's aversion to mining did not apply to industrial mining, such as coal mining and iron mining. Iron was essential from everything from Dutch ovens to wagon wheels. So in 1849, the Parley P. Pratt over the Rim expedition set out to explore southern Utah to look for settlement sites and resources. One of the places they camped was Parowan, and from Parowan, part of the party came further south and through what is now Enoch, and about 4 miles west of Cedar City, they discovered the iron mines. So in 1850, Brigham Young established the Iron Mission. He called 120 men, 30 women, and 18 children to settle Parowan. In early 1851, coal was discovered in Coal Creek, up Right-Hand Canyon in near Cedar City. And of course, you need fuel for iron smelting. So Cedar City was settled in November of 1851, and the Deseret Iron Works was established. And Brigham Young began recruiting people from England and Wales, people that worked in the iron industry and that were coal miners, to come to Cedar City and work in the iron mines. Well, it turns out that in 1858 the iron mission was dissolved, and that work was given up. That first iron mining took place at the northwest end of Iron Mountain. As you drove out here, you probably saw some tailings, and that's the southwest end of Iron Mountain. And this discovery out here was by Peter Schertz. Did you have a question?
No.
Okay. This was discovered by Peter Schertz. So Ebenezer Hanks led out in attempting to reestablish iron mining. The reason it failed in Cedar City, or the reasons were many. One was they had some flooding. Their foundry was along Coal Creek there by the East Canyon Park in Cedar City. They had some flooding. Their furnace blew out. They had a grasshopper plague, and it took almost everybody in Cedar all of their time to just survive, let alone mine iron and coal. And then there was the Mountain Meadow Massacre and the coming of Johnston's army. And Brigham Young released everybody in the Iron Mission. There were about 900 residents at the time he released them. It was said everybody left except those that couldn't afford to go. There were 300 left when they started the evacuation. He dissolved the Cedar Stake and put Cedar City in the Parowan Stake until the 1930s. Well, in 1868, Ebenezer Hanks organized the Union Mining Company and came out here with some ambitious plans. And what you'll see when you go in here is one of the best preserved beehive charcoal kilns that you'll find anywhere. Those kilns were important. That's where they made the charcoal. You need 3 ingredients for an iron foundry for making iron. You need the iron ore, you need lime, and you need the charcoal. This is the Dixie National Forest. In fact, the area where the iron foundry sits and so forth was part of the Dixie National Forest. Today it's part of Utah State Parks. What remains here was put on the National Historical Register in 1971. In addition to the charcoal kiln, and what they did, they cut these pinyon pines and junipers, stacked it in those charcoal kilns. Eventually they had 3 of those kilns.
Do they look like the one that's here now?
Exactly. 2 of them are gone. One of them still exists. They would fill that clear full of pinyon pine and juniper. They'd fill it from the front and then the back, and they had to seal it off so it was airtight. And you started the fire at the bottom and left it to smolder. It took days to produce 50 pounds of charcoal. And 50 pounds of charcoal was enough to smelt about 2,300 pounds, just over a ton of iron. So this was labor intensive, yes.
What are they made of, the beehives?
What?
What are they made out of?
Oh, they're made out of rock.
Are they rock?
Yeah, rock and brick. The homes here were made out of, mostly were made out of native stone that they could pick up from the area and from pine. Some of them were lumber homes. You also will see a chimney, and some of you can see it from where you're sitting. That was the chimney for the foundry. There is an old Spanish Arastria. They took a mule onto the end of a tongue, put rock in there, and the mules would go round and round and round and grind the rock into sand. You needed the sand for the molds, for the iron. By 1870, the 1870 census, there were 97 people living here in 19 families. But it grew rapidly after that because they put in a pattern shop and a mold, and eventually they were producing up to 5 and 6, and the maximum they ever produced in a day was 7 tons. The iron foundry in Cedar in 8 years produced 25 ton, and they produce 5 ton out here quite often on a day's run. The iron in Cedar City, the foundry there mostly made nails and a little bit of farm equipment, some pans and things such as that, and the bell that went into the Cedar Tabernacle. Out here, the iron that was produced at first went into farm machinery, into nails. Then they began mass producing more, and they sold iron to the Utah Western Railroad. They sold a lot of iron to Pioche, Nevada for the mines. And the 12 life-size oxen that hold up the baptismal font in St. George, that iron all came from here at Irontown.
When they rebuilt the temple, is it still the same oxen? Do you know?
It's the same oxen and it's the same font. They've had to do some repairs on that font. It was leaking, but it's the same font.
Now, they brought it from Salt Lake though, right? So they took the iron up there to make them?
That was one of the problems. That's why this place died off, was the problem of transportation. It was costing about $40 a ton to freight from here to Salt Lake. And a lot of, the production of the oxen, but it was all iron from here at Iron Mountain.
Were they cast? Where were they cast?
Yeah, they were cast in Salt Lake.
The church bell at the Old South Ward, that's not iron from here, is it?
Not that I know of. The church bell that was in the old tabernacle, though, is in the Rock Church on Center Street in Cedar City.
The bell that came out of the Southward Chapel was cast and manufactured in Ohio.
That's right. I remember you text me about that when they were moving the bell and putting it in the Southward Chapel. Bob?
Wayne, I was looking on the internet about old Irontown, and it was saying that there are some of the richest iron ore deposits in the world here.
Iron County still contains, in Iron Mountain, probably the most natural iron ore and the richest deposit in the United States. One of the things that killed iron mining in Iron County was foreign competition and tax rates. At any rate, by 1871, this community was beginning to boom. It warranted a post office. They built a school here. The church was organized as a branch here in Irontown. Ebenezer Hanks had some ambitious plans, and by the mid-1870s, it was costing more than $4,000 a month to pay the payroll. Now, if you think back and realize that people were being paid $2.50 and $3 a day for work, over $4,000 a month is a pretty big payroll, and that was significant. They needed people to cut the trees to tend the fires. They needed the lime burners. They needed masons, people that tended the foundry, the men that worked on that arrastra, grinding. They needed some farmers and some carpenters to help build the community. So it became quite a booming community. In 1874, Ebenezer Hanks reorganized it, and he had first called it the Union Iron Works. He now called it the Utah Iron Manufacturing Company. And he solicited investors. And he didn't care whether they were members of the church or not. It was listed on the stock market, and anybody could invest. His plans were to build railroad from here to Salt Lake City. He also wanted to build a railroad from here to the Colorado River and put iron on barges and send it down to San Diego in California. He bought the old Bullionville Pioche Railroad, 20-mile railroad. He was going to run it from Right Hand Canyon to here to bring coal for the smelting. It turns out that the coal from the Cedar coal mines was too brittle and had too high a sulfur content to really be good for a coking process, and so they mainly had to rely on these ovens that you'll see here. Unfortunately, by 1880, there were some claim jumpers, and it kind of cooled things off here. It was reorganized as the Great Western Iron and Manufacturing Company, and the Mormon Church subsidized this process beginning in 1881. In 1884, they won the lawsuit over the claim jumpers. Their claims were validated, so they began in earnest. They built another foundry and started from scratch. But by 1890, iron could be imported from the east cheaper than they could ship it from here to Salt Lake City. And none of Ebenezer Hanks' ambitious plans came to fruition. He didn't build a rail.
Transported in 1880.
What?
How did it get to Salt Lake?
Pardon me?
How did the iron get to Salt Lake in 1880?
Freighters, wagons, teams and wagons. Now they could take it to Milford and put it on the railroad at Milford. And eventually they could take it to Modena and put it on the railroad at Modena and send it from Modena to Salt Lake City. But it was still costing more per ton than the iron that was shipped in from the east. So in 1890, the machinery that still existed here was sold off. With the iron foundry gone, there was no reason for people to be here. Many people moved their homes 7 miles down the creek to Newcastle, took up farming. Others just left. They allowed this town to literally crumble. And unfortunately, it wasn't until 1948 that anybody did anything about preserving it. You see a lot of homes that have been built recently, so it's not entirely a ghost town now, but it is unincorporated. So you may want to wander through and see what's left of the iron processing, the kiln, the chimney there for the foundry, and the old Spanish arrasteria is still there.
Spanish what?
Arrest.
That's where they
Where they made sand out of rock?
rocks.
Sand. Yes. Go ahead.
My question is, obviously, that before cars and the railroad didn't pass that way, I assume they must be.
All righty. In 1923, the railroad came from Lund to Cedar City. And when that happened, it opened up the mines again. And the ore was shipped first to Ironton in Springville. And then during World War II, the federal government built Geneva at Orem. And so when that was finished, they shipped ore to Geneva. And well into the 1960s, iron mining thrived in Iron County. These iron mines were one of the main employers of Iron County. By the early 1980s, that ceased. Steve Gilbert revived it, and I think he still does some work. But it's minimal compared to what they were doing here prior to 1890, or what they did from 1923 until 1980. Yes?
So, down home, my dad showed me a lime kiln
Yes,
spread around out in the desert out there.
right.
Where did they get their lime here?
Oh, we have a big lime mine east of Cedar City. Plenty of lime.
Is that the one up there by Rusty's?
Yes, and that's shipped to Las Vegas. Lime was important. Lime was part of the heating process. The coke and the lime melted the iron ore. The iron was heavier than other materials, and it would sink to the bottom. And impurities would adhere to the lime. So lime was important in the foundry process.
What temperature does it melt, iron?
500 degrees plus. Now, another thing about using charcoal from the trees as opposed to coal, the resulting pig iron, as they call it, was softer and more malleable than pig iron produced from coal. Yes.
So the charcoal, was that an ingredient in the iron, or was it just a part of the burning process?
It's part of the burning process. It took several days to produce 50 pounds of charcoal.
Right.
And 50 pounds of charcoal, as I said, produced about 2,300 pounds of pig iron.
I'm surprised there's a single juniper or pine tree in this whole country. Are these all new?
Yes, a lot of them are. Most of them are. This is recent growth. Yes, Bob.